In this Baldur's Gate 3 video, we're going to be taking a look at a recent Steam post made by Larian. This was done just today. And it goes over quite a few things that's going to be affecting the early access. And the first thing I want to talk about is probably not something that you guys are going to be thrilled with. It's not something that's going to affect most of you. But something that I'm really curious about, because it's going to affect me a lot, is streaming. They have Twitch integration is coming even with the early access on day one, allowing people who watch streams to dictate what happens on stream and to vote for the choices they want. This is something that's going to be really fun. A lot of people didn't get to see too much of me playing Divinity Original Sin 2, so obviously that's going to change with Baldur's Gate 3. So if you guys want to stop by, vote for things, see the game, be sure to do that. But let's get into the things that are going to affect everyone. So the first thing to note is that the early access is not going to have different difficulty levels. This means there's only going to be one difficulty level in early access, though they do have different difficulty levels planned for live release. And they haven't quite said exactly what these different difficulty levels are going to entail, whether it's just going to be more health and damage or whether there's going to be more enemies. It seems like this thing is very much up in the air and up for discussion for them right now. But when playing early access, you're not going to see a different difficulty choice, so there's one difficulty for everyone. Another thing that they've announced is that there is no alignment system true to D&D 5th edition. Players can be good, evil, neutral, however they want, and people will react around you accordingly, but you don't have a strict alignment. Things are not locked out to you. Based on the decisions you make and so forth. So if you're expecting some sort of alignment system from older editions of Dungeons & Dragons, that simply is not going to be in early access or the game. Speaking specifically about mod support for the game, it's going to have modding support. Larian was a huge fan of what people did with DOS 2. They definitely want the same thing for BG3, and modding has been a huge part of Dungeons & Dragons, particularly in the video game department. Neverwinter Nights, it was probably one of the biggest things about the community. So it's not a big surprise that this is going to happen. However, there will not be modding support during early access. For those of you who like modding the game, you're going to have to wait for launch. And we still don't know if they're going to be available at launch or if it's something they're going to be adding afterward. But we do know that they're not going to be available during early access. Talking about Lone Wolf, this is something that there's been a huge demand for Baldur's Gate 3. People loved playing Lone Wolf in Divinity Original Sin 2. There's a whole bunch of people who just like playing by themselves in RPGs. I, from time to time, like to do it myself, so I totally understand this. They are working on implementing a Lone Wolf mode into the game, which is amazing because it's not something I think you'd expect from Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons has always sort of been a party-focused game, so this is going to be huge. However, it's not going to be available at the beginning of early access, but they're talking about adding it sometime throughout the early access process. So don't lose out hope. Just because it's not there on day one of early access, it'll probably be added sometime during the early access window, so you can look forward to that. Will there be ultra-wide support? Larian is working on this. They're hoping to get it implemented for early access. It doesn't say whether this is actually going to make it into early access or a live release, but they do say they're currently playing. Some of them are currently playing the game on ultra wide. So I'd expect this to at least have a beta option, at your own risk, and see if it works. And then as they get it dialed in, it'll be eventually added to the game. For those of you wondering what languages early access is going to come in, confirmed so far are English, French, German, Polish, Russian, Spanish, and simplified Chinese. That's for early access, but they've decided to also include Brazilian Portuguese and Italian for 1.0, which is the live release of the game, though they will not make it into early access. I don't know if they're going to be adding more languages with time, but I highly suspect it's going to be based on the feedback they get from the community. If there's a lot of people clamoring for a certain language, maybe they'll add that, but they have not stated that is to be the case. Another question people have been wondering is whether their character progression in early access will translate over to live release. That is a big no. Generally speaking, when you're playing an early access build for any game, not necessarily Divinity games or Larian games specifically, generally they don't carry your progression over because changes get made. And if any of you have seen the early access for Divinity and Divinity Original Sin 2, they changed quite a bit from early access to what you got at live release. So these just wouldn't be compatible. So you can expect your character to be wiped when you start the live game. Another question people were asking is, will the game be available on GOG? And Larian stated that they are working on making that happen. There's no news on exactly if that's going to happen or when that might happen, but it is something they are trying to make happen, so that's good news if you're a GOG fan. And the last question, but not the least question, is what is the exact release time of the game? And the answer to that is 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on September 30th. So it doesn't matter where you live. It's not 10 a.m. in your region. This is the global launch time for the early access. It's 10 a.m. PST, so figure out what that is in your time zone, because that's when you're going to be able to play the game either on Stadia or on PC. Stay tuned for more Baldur's Gate 3 content as we draw closer to the launch. We have one more video to go on the basics of 5th edition D&D. This one's on classing and multi-classing, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. That should be happening in the next week or so. Once early access is out, we're going to have tons of class guides, build guides, getting started guides, everything you could possibly want to know about the game we're going to be making guides for. And make sure you check out the wiki as well, because we're going to be filling it up like usual, like we always do, with information, specific questions about quests, how to resolve them, all that sort of stuff that you really want to know. Also, if you haven't yet, drop by our Twitch channel. We're going to be streaming Baldur's Gate Early Access probably for the bulk of October and the very last days of September. So if you guys want to come by, hang out, use the Twitch integration features and control exactly what our characters do, or just have a beer and do whatever, feel free to come by and see us there.